Okay, awesome, man. Rafa, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, man.
So let's pick up from the start. Can you tell me in a nutshell what it is you're studying and how that works?
Okay. So I'm studying what could be described as either criminal psychology or legal psychology. What I say is like the definition of it is really just studying either. It depends on where you branch out. If you decide to work in the court of law, you become an expert in, okay, how certain behaviors and certain mental, I'm kind of sick right now. Certain mental, this word's not coming to me.
Oh, like, mental conditions?
Yeah, exactly. How that can influence in your ability to be able to, decide whether or not you do something. So let's say, for example, if you were completely during a schizophrenic breakdown and you killed someone, you still have to be accounted for, but not in the same way as if you consciously went and killed someone. Why do we say that? Because it's not the same. The law and the jail system is not designed to punish. It's designed to rehabilitate. So it's different if you have to be rehabilitated in a I'm sick kind of way, sick mentally, or you have to be rehabilitated in I'm a criminal and I think my needs and my wants are more important than anyone else. Then you can work with the cops or with the military, which actually we had the other day we were talking in our masters with some of the military guys, and they are the ones that take psychology the most serious, which surprised me a lot. Like,
oh, really?
Psychology is really yeah, exactly. That it was a surprise. It's really well regarded, at least within the Spanish army, because they do use it a lot. They use it in combat, in post-combat, so I was really surprised by that. So you can either branch out to the military and help them in their missions and go abroad with them, or you can go with the cops, which is a tougher route, but it has the most interesting stuff, because you help with profiling, designing investigation, designing where, okay, we have this profile, we have these characteristics, I think they're going to move around here, so let's put cops here and here, really interesting stuff.
Right, okay. So when you talk about the military and cops, you're talking about potential careers, from what you're learning, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay, fascinating. So we tried to have this conversation before, but we had some technical issues. But something you actually mentioned last time we spoke, before, we lost the connection, you were talking about seeing like the messy sides of human psychology. Do you have any thoughts on that now? Like, what comes to mind when I say that?
Okay, I didn't get the beginning of the question. Can you repeat?
Yeah, sure. So you mentioned last time that you witness the messy side of human psychology. What do you mean by that?
Well, like psychology, when you study it as if you want to do regular psychology, let's say school psychology, normal psychology, in the sense that you're going to get people with anxiety, maybe some depressed people, suicidal, maybe, but it's all going to fall between, regular-ish things, because the thing is, people who are really down and people who have really serious issues will more than likely not come for help, because they're really far gone. It's not an exact science, but the thing is, if you work in the realm of normal people with normal issues that just want to get better, yeah, you're gonna find some things, but it's still gonna fall between certain normal people. But if you go into, okay, this person committed a crime and is alleging that it was because of a mental illness that affected him so much that he didn't know what he was doing, you're gonna start getting into deeper waters for sure. Like, you're gonna see things and hear things that I always say, look, I cannot be shocked anymore. And sure enough, every couple of months, something comes along, and I'm like,
wow.
Jesus.
Can you go into any of that? Like, what's some of the craziest things that you've been learning about people, as you're studying this?
The craziest thing about people is when you hear really disturbing stuff and you think, oh, for sure, this must be some really sick individual, and then it's just a normal dude, and you're like,
wow.
Yeah, that's what's most disturbing, because we always want to find reason for stuff, and I bet there is reason for many of this stuff, but it's still reason within unreasonable behavior, if that makes any sense. Because, okay, it's easy for me to understand someone being in a psychotic break, thinking that having delusions and having a... wait a second.
Sure.
Wait a second. Don't worry. The coronavirus has everyone freaking out over here.
Yeah, well, so what you were saying reminds me of something I've been talking about recently, which is, I don't know if you can ever truly know somebody, like, even if, what do you think about that?
Well, that's really good that you brought it up, because that's true. Like, knowing someone, we don't even know ourselves properly.
Right.
There's no one that wholly, completely knows themselves, so how are you from the outside going to know anyone?
Right.
And here's the thing. The self is an ever-changing thing. So you're never going to be the same person as yesterday. Your main core concepts and core works will remain for sure most of the time, but some days you change it with every day that passes. You know more things, you forget some, you make new friendships, you lose some. So you're never quite the same as you were 1 year before, or what you will be from 10 years from now. Certain things will remain for sure.
Right.
But how can we say that we know someone when, first of all, they change constantly? Second of all, they don't know themselves. And third of all, they can never reveal completely who they are, because that's not how it works. So we would be talking about three selves, as I like to think of it. The one that everyone can see, the one that you portray, the one that's out in the open and someone that's not you can get to know. Then there's the self that you know, that's your private self, the one that you only know. You're the only one that knows why you do this, why you don't, or so you think. And then there's subconscious self. The things happen, you feel certain ways, and most of the times you can't even get to that knowledge because it's deep inside of your brain. So yeah.
Right. Wow, that's fascinating to me. This is a new perspective for me right now. This is really fascinating. So sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, tell me. No.
Well, I was gonna say this is the thing that strikes me when I see these breakdown videos of prolific criminals. Is often they have families that have known them for decades, and they didn't see it coming. You know what you were saying about crimes just being committed by seemingly normal people.
Yeah, that's a classic thing that you hear on the news, right? Someone murders someone, and then they speak with their neighbors, and their neighbors, oh, he was such a nice dude. You could have never suspected it. Yeah, that's the scariest part.
Do you know about that? That Vegas shooter a couple of years ago that shot like...
Oh, yeah, the one that... Yeah.
Yeah, you know the one, right?
Yeah.
So,
and that's the thing. Usually mass shooters are on the sane side. as clinically we would put it, it's just about feeling rejected by society, falling into a rut, finding a group of people, glorifying certain aspects, and they go out and do this kind of thing.
Right. But so I watched an interview of this guy's brother, the shooter's brother, and he was just so confused. He was just saying, this isn't my brother. I don't understand how he could have, done that. And to me, that's just, a perfect illustration of what we're talking about.
Yeah. And I was just watching, they uploaded to Netflix a documentary about the Unabomber.
Oh, yeah.
And I really want to watch it because they're just speaking with this family, friends, neighbors, and they're all like, I could never believe this would happen. And he was part of the, I think, LSD Harvard studies. So I haven't gotten down to see it, but it's really, really interesting to see what went down there. Because there's, for sure, like, LSD applied in almost torture ways can really bend someone's mind, and it will result in this type of things. Someone that appears normal but fundamentally is not. He has observed certain things in the universe or in himself, and his mind doesn't work the same way as ours, and it's just fundamentally different to us.
I'm curious to hear what you think about this. Do you think a mind can break?
Yes, I think a mind can break. That's a really broad phrase, but I would put it like this. Let's look at PTSD. That's a clear example of a mind breaking. Let's look at these people that suffer great trauma. This is a controversial subject. Some psychologists believe that it doesn't exist, but there's been CAT scans that prove that it does. United States is really for this disease, like multi-personality disorder, when different people seem to live in the same body. There's some people that say that it is, criminals will use this diagnose fast and quick because it gets you out of trouble if you can, but it really is interesting because something happens to a mind when they're really young, something so vile, so gross, so damaging that they cannot integrate it, and the mind splits and breaks in half and creates two different personas. So I would think that's an example of a mind breaking. A mind breaking could be, people that would otherwise in a normal situation never become schizophrenic, but then something so stressful happens to them. And sometimes if something so stressful and drugs at the same time happen, that they can be gone forever. Not gone as in dying, but still they will never recover and they will never be the same. So yeah, I do think it can happen. And it's different scales, different degrees, so it's not like a bone where it's either broken or it's not, because it's much more complex, but I do think, in my perspective, that it can happen.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean I recognize what you're saying, what you're talking about, trauma and PTSD and something so extreme happening in someone's life that they don't even know how to integrate it, like you said,
Exactly.
So kind of going a little bit backwards here, but I'm curious, and we actually spoke about this a little when we met, which was in Thailand, because we were both training in the same kickboxing gym. But how did you initially become interested in this field of study?
In psychology.
Yeah, and
criminal.
Well, specifically criminal psychology, but I'm sure there must have been sort of some kind of path that attracted you to this. Yeah. Tell me about that.
So I started studying psychology not because I had a big because I loved it so much. I was just intrigued by it, and I had to study something because I was feeling pressure to study something.
Yeah.
I said, okay, I'll give it a try. Studies here in Spain aren't that much expensive, it's like 1,000 euros per full year, so I said, it's okay, I'll try it.
Yeah.
And then the more I started studying it, I started reliving things from my past, like psychologists that I had encountered through my life. I had ADHD, so it always was. I saw psychology as something that I didn't quite understand because I hadn't found the right psychologist maybe when I was a kid. And then I started studying it, and I discovered that psychology is much more deeper than what we are portrayed in the media or what we think about it. There's psychobiology, which I fell in love with automatically. So I started to go down the psychobiological route, which is much more focused in brain and how the brain and the conduct relate, and it's much more, I don't want to say scientific, but it's much more pragmatic and more to the point. So I started studying that, but the thing is, by the end of my university degree, I was like, I love this and I want to integrate this in whatever I do, but I don't want to be lost in the academic world and just focus on academics, because that seems like missing out. So I discovered this criminal psychology course, and I was like, okay, that sounds really interesting, because what I was looking is, I would like to do how does certain brain trauma and certain brain damage translates into behavior, and there's amazing studies that I can tell you about in a bit. And so I started just, watching cases, reading things, and I said, I really have to do this. I think this is where my ability can really be brought out, because one thing that I always was good at is just seeing the pattern in certain, if I got the transcript or I saw someone, I could pick up little things and then connect them into, okay, I think this relates to this, to that, and then synthesize it in a little bit. So that's really what this is all about, just watching someone's behavior. And even though they're trying to lie to you most of the times when you're doing interviews, when it's criminal psychology, not normal psychology, and figuring out what happens, how does this relate to what they did and what I think they have. So I really just fell in love with it.
Right. I was wondering something just now, just when you were talking. Do you learn anything about interrogation techniques? Because something I really...
Oh, yeah.
Do you?
Yeah, we did learn about interrogation techniques. For that, we also were looking at, making a murder, the Brendan Darcy case, I think it is called. It's a classic interrogation where everything that shouldn't be done is done, and you end up with a false confession. And what we look at most is about the false confessions. The thing is, when you look about interrogation, the problem isn't people lying to you. The problem is people making mistakes. The 80% of things that aren't accurate in a declaration isn't lies, it's mistakes. People mistake a lot of things. Our memory is so unreliable, it would shock you.
Right.
It's just shocking. We're looking at statistics, like what people think is reliable, like, okay, color, like tone of the voice, height, color, all of these things, and they had such a low reliability rate, like 50%. The only thing that was reliable towards the most is gender. Gender, we usually don't get it wrong. Then is voice, the voice tone, which was funny because people wouldn't put much reliability on that, but it actually does. And that's about it. The rest is like 50%, which is luck at best.
Right.
And then on interrogation techniques, because I got a bit backtracked, because this is a really interesting subject. Yeah, there's the rate technique, interrogación rate, which is in Spanish, but in English I think it's the same, which is by a group of private investigators in the U.S., which is the worst technique you can do, because it creates so many false memories. And the way they do that is they feed you the answer. They kind of shove you into answers, and for someone maybe with low IQ or someone really young, that's when you start getting false memories and false declarations. What we do is more of a cognitive interview, where you let them speak and then backtrack to that and try to fucking do it in a way that you ask them, okay, so now start from this point of the story and tell it backwards, or you start playing little quote unquote games. So you try and see, and then what the information that you get, because our thing is we're not good lie detector tests like the human beings are not, because we see what we want to see. So what we have to do is take this human out of the equation, if that makes any sense. So you get the information out of the interview, and then you apply certain I don't want to say test because it isn't probably a test, but it's like a validity checkpoint. It's called CBTA, I think it is, yeah. And you start. We have protocols, because if I get into it, I have to look up the names and everything. But
right, right. But so you do look at interrogation techniques. No, that's interesting what you were saying about basically how some techniques are priming the subject for the answers that you're looking for, and
oh yeah.
And what you were saying as well about the human memory is so interesting. Like, you probably know about that gorilla video, the gorilla costume video.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it's, for anyone who doesn't know what that is. Actually, Richard Dawkins talked about it in one of his books as well. It's like this video. What is it? Can you explain? It's like a group of people, and you're told to focus on one person.
Exactly. There's a group of people, and I think they ask you, how many times do they pass the ball?
Right.
And you're all focusing on how many times they pass the ball. But you forget to look out because there's a huge gorilla walking through the room.
Right.
There's another one that I love. It's less known, but it's hilarious. They ask you, okay, who killed who? And they show you a picture. Not a picture, it's a video of the butler, and you don't realize, but by the end of the video they ask you, okay, how many things changed? And everything changed, because then you see the full video and everyone's changing the rug, changing the clock, changing everything, they change clothes.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
Wow.
Human memory is way more fragile than what we think, and the false memory phenomenon is really worrying, because it really is like, there's a study that used priming that you were saying earlier, in which they studied, in one case they showed a video of a car crash, and in one group they used words like the two cars collided to tell the story. In other, the two cars smashed. And the more violent the words we use to describe the event, the worse they recalled it, in the sense that they thought, when they asked, a week went by and they asked, how badly was the crash? At what speed were they going? The worst, like the harsher words, like crashing, were, they said, okay, it was 95 miles per hour, and the words like collided were like, okay, 45.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I don't know if I'm explaining it correctly.
No, you are. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, that's super interesting. This is kind of a small tangent, but it just reminds me of. Do you know about like romanticization? Like when people romanticize a period of their life, like sometimes. Or do you know that expression, like rose-tinted glasses, when you look at something and you only remember the good, even though there was a lot of bad, and like an old memory. I don't know. It just reminds me of that.
No, yeah, totally. And the thing is, when we tend to remember things that happened while we're in the same state of mind as we are now. So if you're really happy, you're gonna remember things mostly about happy times, and if you're sad, you're only going to be thinking about how many sad things happened during the last weeks or months or years.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Earlier, you mentioned something that you wanted to pick back up on. You were talking about studies of trauma affecting behavior.
Oh, yeah. Because there's when we get patients that are, let's say, 45, 55, 65, with no history of, mental diseases or anything, that just start behaving really weird out of the blue. like a 30% of those cases has to do with a tumor growing in between the brain and the skull, right about in the prefrontal cortex area, because that area is mostly, well, the whole brain is connected, and the more we understand it, the more connected it seems. But the frontal part of the brain is it's about impulse control and things you don't want to do, so you can refrain from doing. And these people that get these tumors, they start simply, like they will be with their wives or husbands and start groping people. They will smack kids with no, like, they just don't care. They're just completely gone. And if you can get the tumor out, they revert to normal, mostly.
Wow.
So it is really,
Well, that Texas tower shooter from I think the 1950s. Did you know about that case? He had a tumor in his head, and this guy, he was a student at, I think it was University of Texas, a few decades ago, and he suddenly gets the urge to just go up to the university clock tower and start shooting a bunch of people. And in the
I read about it.
Yeah, you read about that, right? And then he wanted an autopsy done after he died, and it turns out when they autopsied him, they found a tumor in his brain.
Yeah, I was told a case. There was this prominent in the United States, this prominent, I don't know if it was psychiatry teacher or psychology teacher, and he was into psychobiology and whatnot, and they were having a dinner. And he had been behaving a bit odd lately, but they were with some colleagues and his wife and everything, and they had their kid, not his kid, but the other friends brought along their kid, and the kid knocked out a vase on the ground, and it broke, and the guy just snapped, started punching the kid, he started strangling him and yelling, I would kill you if I had my gun with me. And everyone gets on shock, because he's like, imagine, just a normal dude, you're hanging out with him, he's a university professor, and the cops come, arrest him, and the first thing he does is like, get someone to look at my brain now, because something's happening. And sure enough, there was a tumor in his head.
Man, that's insane, because that's scary, because it's like, that could happen to you, right? It could just happen to anyone.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing is, if you know that, it's better to know it, because then if suddenly out of the blue you know someone that starts acting completely out of character, you can say, okay, maybe go see a doctor about it, maybe go get a scan.
Yeah, I'll definitely bear that in mind.
Out of the blue.
Wow, man. I'm curious, where do you think about the big picture of where you're going professionally? Like, what would you like to get out of this in your life? Would you like to become an expert of some sort? Would you like to, gain a certain level of experience? Do you think about that kind of stuff?
Well, I was thinking about maybe opening up my own practice, and just, I want to, you have to pay the bills, so I'll have to get some private clients and whatnot. Yeah. But the thing is, what I really want to do is, in Spain, there's like, I don't know if it's the same over there, but in here, for example, if you cannot pay a lawyer, they give you one for free.
Right.
Right, so there's the same for psychologists in the crime department area. If they need a psychologist to look at a case and testify, and none of the parts have money, the state will pay like a little amount of money to a psychologist so they can do it.
Right.
And those cases are usually, like, you cannot make a living out of those, but the thing is, the most shocking and different things come from that, so that keeps you on your toes and keeps you learning. So I want to really focus on that.
Wow. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool to hear. I mean, from all the times that we've spoken, you seem, pretty sharp and pretty serious. So it's interesting for me to imagine, where you might go professionally. And it makes me wonder as well, like, are you doing anything at the moment besides your actual studies? to kind of supplement your learning, supplement your knowledge, you know?
Yeah, well, right now what I'm doing is I'm working at the lawyer's office, you know, doing nothing lawyer-like, just doing a bit of office work.
Oh, cool.
Because I think, well, first of all, I need to get some money to pay for living and such.
Right.
And then it's always good to learn different abilities, because when you have to learn different things from different aspects of life, because that helps your brain keep healthy and keep sharp.
Oh, yeah.
So being on your toes and going out of your comfort zone is really, really, really good. It's really good. It keeps you sharp, and then as the years go by, your brain will appreciate that.
Oh, yeah,
It's the same
agree.
with one guy and so, but the problem with that is all the brain trauma, which is yikes.
Oh, say that again, the last part, older brains?
Brain trauma that you get from Muay Thai is kind of a lot.
Yeah, man, yeah. Yeah, well, that's true. So, well, what are you doing? So you were talking just now about, you know, staying out of your comfort zone and kind of challenging yourself. Can you talk about anything that you're doing at the moment, or anything that you would like to do?
Well, right now, besides that, I'm working and studying and trying to keep on top of it.
Absolutely.
Which is it's a bit
Full-time job.
overwhelming because I'm doing also my practical. But yeah, I started doing some rock climbing, and I also some mountain biking, because things that I always wanted to do but never did.
Right.
And then probably getting to jiu-jitsu, as we spoke in Thailand, because I think it's the least aggressive towards the head out of the martial arts. But I still haven't found a place close to my house. But I really want to get on with that.
You and me both, man. I've been thinking about jiu-jitsu a lot lately. It's also supposed to be like one of the most, you know, functional just martial arts to know, you know, one of the most useful.
Yeah. Totally.
Ah, man.
Totally the most useful.
What I'm wondering, like, okay, so how long up until now, for starters, have you been studying psychology and criminal psychology?
Yeah.
Like, how long has it been? Like, how many?
How long?
Yeah.
I would say, okay, so it's, I'd say close to, wait 1 second. Yeah, close to 6-7 years.
Wow, that's insane. Close to 6-7 years. Is there something that comes to mind right now as like one of the coolest things, or one of the most important things that you've learned in that time? Is there something that stands out?
Well, something that stands out in all of this time. Well, I mean, just how much different we all seem, and how similar we really, really are. Like that's shocking to me. Cause,
really?
Like I could swear we were like completely different from one person to the other, and then when you actually look it up close, we're just so fucking similar in the core things, and in most of the things, and most of the mechanism, and most of the distortions, and most of everything. But then we seem so different. That's the same thing that happens with chimpanzees and gorillas. Like we are, like is it 1% or less than 1% genetically different? And look at how different we look from the outside. So,
right. Yeah,
I don't know.
That's an interesting perspective. So, can you elaborate on that just slightly? Like, what is it that what do you think it is that actually differentiates us, if we are actually so similar?
We are super similar, but we have genetics and we have environment, and that's like the holy grail of psychology is twins that are separated at birth. It's why it sounds horrible,
right?
But the thing is, that's genetically exact or almost exact people,
right?
That are grown in a different environment, and then you can see like they develop different illnesses, they grow differently, everything about them is different, but in a sense it's almost, they have certain things in common, and that then is when you start to realize, okay, so if I weren't born where I was born, and I was born some other place, would I even be recognizable? Would I be able to, would people say, okay, but yeah, he's doing the typical things that he does, or would it be a completely different person?
Yeah, right.
And when you apply that to the human scale, we are all pretty similar, but just a little 0.5 difference over the course of years, and with the influence of the environment, it gets weird, it gets different.
Yeah. There's a couple of last things I wanted to ask you. One of them is, what is it that interests you most about people in general? It can be, in this field of studying criminals, or just people in general, in the field of psychology, more broadly. What is it that interests you most about people?
What is it that interests me? It's a good question. Well, I would have to guess to see things that to me seem so far-fetched, and then you see them live, and you see people with these things. I don't know if you remember, there was, I studied something in the career which is a fantasia, I don't know how to pronounce it in English, which means people that cannot create mental images, they cannot imagine anything.
Oh, no way.
They just can't. And you read that in a textbook, and it's like, okay, whatever. There's 100 more different types of things, like not being able to recognize faces and whatnot.
Right.
But then on Thailand, we met this American guy who had this thing, and I got to talk with him and ask him things, and I was just fascinated by it, because, like, there are people living really different lives from us, like, with different, or people that can smell colors or feel music or things like that. That's more of a personal thing that I like, not as a study field.
Yeah.
It could be interesting for studies, but not to earn a living. So you always have to balance what you like about psychology and what you can kind of make a living out of.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I mean, that leads me to pretty much my last question at the moment, which is, I mean, I know we talked about like the future a moment ago, professionally speaking, but is there something that you're excited about for your future, or for the future in general? Is there something that you're really looking forward to?
Yeah, I would say, like, psychology has some really great years ahead of itself.
Interesting.
I think it's going to grow a lot. I think science and technology is going to allow us to go farther and deeper. And I only wish I lived longer. I only wish instead of 80, 90 years, I could live to be 200. Because I'm super excited about the future and seeing how everything changes. And on the personal note, I just want to get out there and start doing things and start trying things and have time to dedicate myself solely to psychology and reading and studying more and see where it takes me. Because that's the thing, you never know. You start studying one thing, then something comes along, and you never know. I spoke with a lot of teachers and a lot of psychologists who just end up in places, and they're super glad about it. You just start working, start studying, and see where it takes you.
Yeah, it's exciting. Like what you just said about wishing you could live longer, man. I've been thinking about that too. Like, it's just everything has been advancing so much and so fast over the past few decades, and it just seems to be, advancing more and more. And it's like, man, where are we gonna be in 200 years? It's. I really wish I could see. Yeah,
me too. Like, truly. And I always wonder, because it seems like humanity is on its last 400 years tops, at least for me, because like everything the way it's going. But let's imagine it wasn't. Let's imagine there's still thousands of years ahead of us. I can even begin to fathom what it will be like, because technology explodes in such an exponential way. I can only just dream about it, really. We seem so advanced, and this is just the beginning, completely. Like 30 years ago, internet was nothing.
It was. That's something interesting you just said, though. I wonder if what makes you think that humanity might only have 4 centuries ahead of it before it just did. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
I don't know. Nuclear weapons, climate change, an intelligent virus, or just a comet from outer space, or Yellowstone blowing up.
Interesting.
It's not. I don't know. It's just a big unknown for me.
A big unknown for sure.
We can sustain this level of development and sustain this, and if we do, is it gonna bring us to a happier future, or is it gonna be some Black Mirror type future?
Yeah. Do you know about the Fermi Paradox?
Yeah. That's why I was saying this. Like, why isn't there more life out there if it's so easy?
Well, there's so many barriers,
right?
Right?
Life to extinguish itself. I don't know.
Right, exactly. Well, that's one of the big kind of arguments, is that there could be a great barrier ahead of us, and it could be, extinction that we might cause ourselves,
Yeah, the big unknown that's out there, something that's out there that we do not know yet, and it's just when we get to a certain level of development, it just like, whoop, out.
Yeah, man. Well, it's definitely exciting anyway. I think we can agree on that.
Yes, for sure. And I think we have good years ahead of us, so let's try and enjoy.
I think that's a beautiful note to end on, man. That's super inspiring. Rafa, thanks so much for talking about everything, and thank you so much for taking the time, man. I'm glad we finally got to do this.
Yeah, me too.